Welcome to the Next Level Podcast, powered by San Manuel, a series connecting you with the best minds in casino, hospitality, tribal government, and beyond. Enjoy the show.
Jennifer Marelia, how are you doing today?
I am so well. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining. We're really excited. 2025. I believe this is year 4 of Next Level, or 5. Don't quote me on that. But excited to have a guest of your caliber on. And we were chatting a little bit before we started recording. I just feel like there's so much change, not only just in the live event space, but also in the audio medium. And I know you kind of touch those worlds. So having you on as the director of brand partnerships at iHeartMedia is a pleasure. So once again, just thank you for taking the time today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Jennifer, we always like to start with the origin story. So rather than me go through your bio and your amazing career up to this point, kind of give the audience the 3-minute high level, kind of where you started, what ultimately got you into the career that you're in, and what led to where you're at today.
Well, I'll try to make it brief, but there's always one thing that I've, sort of leaned in on throughout my career, and that's identifying a mentor. And like asking questions with people within the industry. And then it sort of helps, pave the way for you. In high school, I was really involved in like journalism and, took interest in that at a young age. We had a family vacation one year and met this woman who lived in New York. She was very vibrant, excited. She told me she worked in media. And as soon as I was done with college, she said, just let me know, because we stayed in touch, that she would help me get my first job out of college, which was at Sony Pictures in the syndication sales division. I was really excited because, when you get out of college, and my focus was speech communications, radio, television, and film. I knew living in LA, being born and raised in LA, like entertainment was going to be the lane that I was picking for myself. But what exactly was it? I really loved music, but meeting my first mentor and having her guide me through media and connecting me with my first role really brought me on my path. And I was really lucky to meet some of the major players at such a young age, like in the film and TV industry, at one of the biggest film production houses like in Southern California, in the world, really. So I learned quite a lot working there for 4 years.
So then from Sony, where did your career kind of go from there?
I went over to Procter & Gamble. They had a division here in Los Angeles. I worked there for several years. I learned how to launch a brand to market. It was in their hair and prestige divisions. And then they collapsed that division in Los Angeles, and I was offered a role in Singapore, which I declined because at such a young age, that was very overwhelming and intimidating for me. And it wasn't really quite the path that I wanted to continue on. I wanted to stay in entertainment. I wanted to stay in Los Angeles. And then I came across a position at Clear Channel, which was what iHeart was before. And I took the interview at a local radio station, and I loved music. I loved radio. I would call in and be caller 101 or caller 102 throughout my high school years. And I said, okay, this is great. This is in Burbank. I get to work with really great talent, at that time. And even today, your on-air personalities are like the first influencers. So to be like working with them was very, very cool. I got the job and I worked with Clear Channel that evolved to iHeart for 7 years before I went to my next role, which was the director of sales over at Live Nation. And I worked with them for about 1.5 years, leading up like their festivals, and really like got involved in events there and learned that part of the business with music, and then got called by SiriusXM and went over there for several years, worked with Howard Stern, all of their news properties, really got to work with some different clients on a national scale. Just kept growing and growing with my career. And then I decided, I want to come home. So I came back to iHeart. And, my first tour at Clear Channel, Yamava Casino, was San Manuel and was my client. That was over 20 years ago. And you are my client now. And it's just been a pleasure and a privilege.
So a couple of things I want to come back to. I guess the first question I have is kind of going back. It feels like you've always had a natural pull towards entertainment. And then even in your career story there, it seems like that's still been a magnet, so to speak, within your career, like wanting to stay close, entertainment, that space. And I meet a lot of individuals, especially younger in their career, who just have a natural draw to entertainment. I guess for those who might be listening, who have an interest in entertainment, or maybe are just beginning their career in entertainment or live events or whatever it may be, for you, because it's a lot, right? It's a pretty fast work pace, so to speak. For you, what has kept you kind of passionate about that space?
I want to say it's been my clients, the people I work with. I've always, been fortunate enough to create these genuine, like mutually beneficial relationships. And what keeps me here are those relationships.
So that kind of jumps to my next question, and I want to come back to mentors because you mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if you had to simplify it in its simplest form, because I said you're the director of brand partnerships, a big role at iHeartMedia, in its simplest form, the main function of my current role is blank. How would you finish that sentence?
One, I feel like it's providing like the ultimate strategic campaign or marketing plan for your clients, and really honing in and listening to what your clients are needing and wanting, and really being the matchmaker of all of the things that they need and pair it up with what you have to offer. So I feel like I'm a matchmaker of like different media tactics. That's kind of how I feel. I guess the best way or antidote or analogy that you can put it in.
So with that, matchmaker, I've never heard that term before when it comes to partnership. So for you, let's double click on that a little bit.
Sure.
What are the keys to a successful partnership in your eyes? Not only just for iHeart, but also the client, and also making sure that iHeart has, that's mutually beneficial when you think about a great partnership.
Well, I think number one, you need to be able to listen. There's a lot of people on the other side of you, and everyone has great ideas, and you have to make sure you're writing it all down and taking it all in. And not everyone has the same ideas. So as a liaison between partners and your own company, you have to really be able to form this like beautiful relationship. And I think that the best way to do it is not letting anyone know that they're not on the same side. So bringing that all together, working like behind the scenes, and then having this end result that everyone feels like they're winning, I think that's the most important part of the job.
So on that note, I think it's important to compare and contrast, because I'm sure that you've worked with a lot of clients, not only just at iHeart, but previously. Mm-hmm. If you had to compare and contrast the ones that just beneficially just didn't work out versus the ones that you felt like were long-term great partners, what was the difference? And where I'm going with this question is, if someone's listening to this, maybe they're a current partner of iHeart, you guys are gigantic, or maybe it's a similar kind of partnership, right? And they're listening, or maybe they're thinking about a new partnership with iHeart or someone similar to you. What are the words of advice you would provide to any maybe current leader or future leader who's looking to strike a partnership? Kind of compare and contrast. What are the core differences between those partnership that worked, well, versus maybe those that didn't?
I think that it's really important to let partners know that if you're going to start investing in your brand and your business, like, yes, test and expand, do something for 3 months, work out the kinks, tweak it, see how you want to measure attribution, but don't go in there thinking you're going to come in for a month and getting the results that you need. You really need to think about a long-term partnership, and you really need to like look at your financials and decide, like, can I do this for a year? Can I do this for 2 years? How am I going to reach the marketplace, efficiently? But I have to really come to terms with spending the dollars in order to get to the end result. So I would tell an advertiser, don't do it if you're thinking of doing it for 30 days. It's really not going to provide you what you need. It won't get you a case study. It won't get you real numbers. You really need to give it at least at minimum 3 months. If anything, I would suggest 6 months, and then continue to ramp up and try different products out, because a portfolio of a different mix of assets and tactics is what's going to lead you to success.
So I also wanted to kind of go there with this conversation, which is, this might sound obvious, but why do you think it's important for those listening that, hey, just being transparent, 3 months to 30 days is just, it's not enough. Like, for those listening, why do you recommend kind of a longer term partnership, especially with, I imagine, with a partnership like iHeart, right? You're trying to grow that top of the funnel awareness and hopefully go into consideration, but kind of speak to it. And like I said, maybe to some it's obvious, but maybe not, like, especially in a 2025 dynamic where I think impressions are harder to garner, at least potential reach versus, what people say is reach. So for you, why do you recommend going a little more long-term to see the type of results one would want?
So collectively, I've been here for 13 years, and, I'm very aware of like all of the different brands that we're working with, even if it's not my own. And the ones that have the most success are clearly the ones that are legacy clients and have longevity. I think repetition, reaching the consumer over and over again and the frequency is very important. You're dealing now in a time where you have social media, you have different, platforms. You're being constantly bombarded. It's like it's sensory bombardment with all these different ways of where you're getting information. So people are forgetting, they're moving quickly, and you have to be constant and being in front of them all the time. The more consistent you are over a long period of time, the more likelihood that you're going to become that household name, or you're going to become that product that they go pick up at the store. So I just think that it's very important to constantly be in front of the consumer.
100%. And I feel like I say this to the team a lot. The average person sees on average low end 4,000 impressions a day, meaning advertisements, digital media, logos in the grocery store, basically anything that's saying, look over here, right? Essentially 4,000 on the low end, some cite up to 10,000. And I always say, like, how many do you remember? And to your point, if I'm only out there for 1 month or, and there's lots of context to this conversation, because there are kind of small windows of opportunity, seasonality that you should strike on. But in general, it takes a long time to build a brand. So to be so, especially in 2025, where you hit it perfectly. Like, I think we're naturally being pulled in so many directions. I had this conversation the other day with somebody, like, it's just a different world where a lot of different ways that you can distract yourself on social media and skip ads and things of that nature. So, it's really important that you're diligent and strategic on these impressions and understanding at the get-go that this takes time to build, don't you think?
100%.
And also, I wanted to ask you, because from day one let's stick with iHeart, because I know you were at iHeart, you left, and then you came back. So day one at iHeart, the first time you were working there was roughly what year?
2006.
Okay. So 2006 to today, when we're recording this, is February 3rd, 2025.
Right.
What has been the biggest change that you have seen from that day to now?
Oh, wow. I really do think it's everything and anything digital. Surprisingly enough, you would think that because of the evolution of digital, that broadcast has changed, but that's not really the case. We have like more radio listeners than 10 years ago now. And I think that the introduction to digital really changed the game because we're able to follow that radio listener in their car, on their laptop, onto their phone, on their Alexa devices. We can feed them those, important ads from our clients like anywhere they go. So we're basically stalking people. But I think digital is what really changed the game. When I started here in 2006, I don't think we had anything digital to offer. I don't remember, but podcasting has just been like mind blowing with how it's ramped up and all of the amazing content and shows that you can have on the iHeart platform. It's just phenomenal. I mean, I'm obsessed. So I think that digital and podcast is really what's, changed the game.
Digital 100%. I think a lot of people listening wouldn't be surprised, but I bet some people might be surprised at you saying actually radio is better than it was 10 years ago, or at least trend wise, it's not declining like people would say. From your perspective, how has radio kind of maintained its relevance while all these mediums have kind of popped up?
I mean, we saw it with, unfortunately, the devastation of the fires. All of our radio broadcasters, along with our TV broadcasters, were out there on the streets, and a lot of people were tuning in. That's where they were getting their news first, their information first. Music with the fire aid, like all of our stations were like behind it. We live in a very highly traffic area, Southern California, from, the valley down to Riverside. Like, people are in their cars. They're not just podcasting, they're listening to radio. And we have the numbers and the metrics to support that. You do think, oh, well, they're probably listening in other ways. Like, they're not. They're still listening to radio. We have like the OG talents. We have the most phenomenal talents, from Colin Cowherd to Ryan Seacrest to, Big Boy in the Morning. And these are legacy on-air talents. Sissany, JoJo on the radio. These are people that have been here for like 20 years, like 15, 20 years, and they have a huge following. So they wouldn't be here unless people were listening.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this, because as you're saying that, and I've thought about this a lot, going back to kind of evaluating every impression, I think the case for radio, and to your point, maybe why it's maintained relevance and in some areas grown, is that level of comfort and community. Meaning, I think in the age of choice, sometimes that's overwhelming. Sometimes people know who they like whether it's a DJ, a radio personality, a podcaster, whomever it may be. And there's a sense of comfort knowing that, I'm making stuff up, they're on Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. when I drive, or they download podcasts every Tuesday and Thursday. And that Tuesday and Thursday is a small win for me. I wonder, do you think I got that right, in the sense of two things could be true? I think there's a lot of distraction, a lot of noise, and a lot more choices for consumers nowadays, which makes it that much harder to garner awareness. But At the same time, there's still these mediums like radio and personalities that I know you all invest in heavy in, that impression is valuable because it's community. It's people who set it, put it there, and they really have the person's attention and ear and trust.
100%. And I think, to your point, you should just come work here, Kyle, because you said it so perfectly. I think that the trust is established. It's not, no offense, like, influencers are great, but it's really quick. You have to follow them for a really long time. I think it's great to diversify and have influencers on social media, but it's just a blip in time, where these are actually thought out, well-programmed, daily shows, Monday through Friday. They have specific segments. There's, a reliability. You get to know these people almost like they're your friend. My mom has a neighbor, and I told her I worked with KLAC, and she's like, oh my gosh, Money and Petros. I follow them. I go to all of their events. And she even knew the programming director and was like, I love him so much. I was like, do you know them personally? And she didn't. It was because she was such a fan and such a listener that she almost convinced herself that this was like family and friends. And that's really something I've seen like time and time again, is the bond that's created between the listener and the talent. The radio talent is really special. Just to your point, it is about community, and it is feeling like they're listening to you, where you can call into them, where you can write into them. It's that close relationship where you can reach out and they will be listening. It's really awesome.
It's funny you say that. I was listening to a popular, I can't remember the actual one, but a popular podcaster who also has famous videos and posts. Basically, where I'm going with this is he's known from a video standpoint, from a podcast standpoint, and also written. He has a popular blog. And what he was saying was interesting. It kind of speaks to what you're saying. He says when fans would come out to see him, he could tell the ones that were listening to him because the approach was just different. To your point, the people were softer. They acted like they already knew them, right? Exactly. They almost felt like, you know me too. And it's just like, I think that's a really special bond, especially if you build it over time, is if you kind of connect with these personalities from an audio standpoint. Another thing to think about too, sometimes you're right in their ear, right? If you're listening to on your AirPods, that's like an intimate space to be, right? So it makes sense when he says that, and it kind of speaks to what you, as far as the power that some of these people have, because it's really a community. And I wanted to touch on something you said, which was podcasts. And while we're on the subject of kind of the change since you've been there at iHeart. So we're going to jump to what I call the bigger picture, where I'll show a headline, a picture, a stat, and we just kind of riff on it.
Okay.
So this came from, and this is not political, right? A lot of experts said, you know, you have these areas in time from a campaign standpoint, presidential election, where some people thought it was the radio era. Some people thought it was the TV era, right? And then we moved into digital and Web 1.0, and then the social, right? Which was kind of in the 2008, 2012. Now it's shifted. I've seen this headline a lot. They said this is the year of podcasts. And the reason why is how powerful it is and how powerful of a medium it is, where you can have these kind of longer form interviews and you have mass reach, right? So they're saying this is the year of the podcast. And then the stat below is projections on people listening to podcasts, projecting next year 6% growth, and then 2027 5.2% growth, over 650 million listeners. So just trying to paint the backdrop of, for you, because I know iHeart's really invested in talent. From your standpoint, what do you make of all this change? It's kind of similar to radio, but curious to get your thoughts on, are you surprised? Are you not surprised? And kind of advice or thoughts you have as you look at these trends.
You know, I'm not surprised. You know, podcast for the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years has been trending upwards. The trajectory, I'm not shocked at all. We have brand new content coming out on our platform. You know, I just feel like it's moving so quickly, and we really have some phenomenal talent with some exceptional shows. We also have case studies and numbers that show the direct response that podcast is getting for, you know, I guess a majority, I don't guess, but a majority of our clients are getting amazing direct response from a national and even, you know, a local or regional perspective. So I'm not surprised. Podcast to me is very relaxing. It's just like quiet, and you're really connected and engaged. And the likelihood of you skipping an ad is really very low. And we've got numbers to prove that. So I feel like the engagement is so unique and so phenomenal that I'm not surprised that it keeps ramping up.
Yeah, it's just been incredible. And it's just kind of how things evolve, right? And to me, I thought the growth would kind of halt at least some point, and it's not. And it's just interesting to see all these headlines. And I want to jump back to, I said I wanted to come back to mentors. So you said that was a huge influence on your career. As far as early in your career, you had some good mentors. Broad question, and you could take some time to think about it.
Okay.
But what when you think about some of your mentors, a piece of advice that maybe you got, or maybe you learned from observing, but knowing what you know now, what's the biggest piece of advice or something that was influential to you that you learned from one of your mentors?
Oh man, this is just, let me think about this. All of my mentors were, I think we were drawn to each other because we do have the same philosophy of like treat others how you want to be treated, right? So I like to present the best version of myself so I can hopefully receive that in return. Always at any event, function, or corporate event, have a glass of wine and hold it and nurse it, and never be that person that, gets too loose at these events. Like, keep your composure. That was another good one. That was my Sony Pictures mentor, Marty Ryder. She's amazing and still a close friend, even 25 years after I started working there. I think also, like, never stop learning. When you're in a role for a really long time, you get stuck doing the same thing over and over again, but you have to always be innovative. Like, read something different, talk to a competitor and see what they've got going on, make friends in different areas of the business and keep those relationships open so you can learn from each other and not just be in your own company, like information, like find different information, ask your clients, like, hey, do you have any research or case studies you guys have been doing that you can share with me? So it gives you more to work with. So just constantly be learning, constantly be innovating, and, just keep your relationships open and like have dialogue with different people all the time.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to turn it the other way.
Oh gosh.
Maybe something popular you heard through your career, or maybe a boss, or maybe you just heard it in passing. But is there something that you challenge a little bit as far as advice you received that you feel like is not true?
Oh, I've been told like, oh, good luck, being able to do this, your first year into this or achieve that. I just say, like, don't listen to the noise. Don't listen to anything negative. You have to be your own ambitious human being, like in whatever career path you have. Obviously be tactful and respectful with the people around you. But if someone is telling you like, no, you figure out how to get a yes, and never let someone tell you that you can't do it, because you absolutely can.
Yeah. And I think, I have a picture behind me. You can't see it, and I won't turn the camera, but something that's big to me is it's the picture of Kermit sipping the tea. And I don't know if you're familiar with that meme or GIF. And sometimes it means like funny comment, but that's not my business. To me, what that means is exactly what you're talking about, which is the noise, right? And the judgment and the opinions, because I think that's important career advice, is you're going to hear a lot of that, right? Like, if you speak up in a meeting, you understand what you say is going to be judged by certain people or whatever. You have to be okay with that. Like, you have to be okay trying your best and sometimes failing. And you're 100% right. Like, not pay attention to the noise, not pay attention to the commentary, unless it's coming out of a good place, right? Context is important. If someone's giving you candor or good feedback, that's different. But just judgment, side comments, things like that, just to put your head down. And like, we're human. Sometimes it's going to hurt. But I think to be successful, I think it's important to be able to have kind of that layer, so to speak, of avoiding, that noise, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And another thing I wanted to touch on too is advice to your younger self. So knowing what you know now, kind of, if you could play the time machine game, and maybe it's after college or maybe it's day one there at Sony, but what would you, if you had 1 minute, what would you say to Jennifer doing the time machine game?
I would tell her to keep, banging on those doors and taking those risks and getting to know the people throughout the different companies, to really just keep figuring out, your path. I would tell her to take the risks before, starting that family and having a family. Do that before you're really, heavily indebted to a mortgage and all those things. Like, those are the times you take those risks. That's when you relocate for a job. That's when you switch up rules to see like how you can grow. And if the door closes in your face a few more times, find another place, or go elsewhere where the door's open, but like never give up.
And today, it seems like you still have a lot of energy for what you do.
Yes.
So looking forward, so going the other way with it, advice to your younger self. But now going forward, when I say what gives you the energy as you look the next 5, 10, 15 years of your career, what are you the most excited about?
I really do love doing custom turnkey events that are consumer facing, that are promotionally driven, that engages the audience, from creating a poolside performance at your casino to bringing podcasters to podcasts live from, a luxury suite. I think creating these special, like, interactive, immersive, innovating, fun promotions and events is what gets me excited, because I want things to be special and new and fresh. And I love working with talent, but I love bringing talent to an audience and having it be live. We were in a pandemic for ever, and we were all stuck inside. So now it's like, how can we get people to have these immersive experiences? And that's what I really love to do.
And I think what you're speaking of too, I think we've all learned from, because there's been a lot that's happened since 2020 and COVID. But I think the one thing that's here to stay, whereas some things might have changed and went back, so to speak, the one thing that's here to stay is people are investing, to your point, in experiences and memories, right? I think we all understand from that time, it taught us about perspective and appreciating the one thing that, we can't get more of, which is time. So to have those special moments at a live concert, or a meal that I really like, or connecting with someone else, or to your point, a cool poolside concert with Sublime. I mean, how awesome is that, right? So creating these memories where people are willing to pay premiums, because I think as a collective, we all value experiences over a lot of times monetary things, don't you think?
I 100% agree with you. It is about having these experiences that kind of take you away to, like, I call it like a happy place from your day-to-day life and grind of how busy things are. And, giving people these breaks to really enjoy themselves. That's what makes me happy. That's what keeps me going. It's to see people smiling and letting loose and having a good time.
100%. And I think we have alignment there too. Not only just what your interests are, but for people listening who are in hospitality, entertainment, casino space, it's the memories, right? Like, ultimately, that's what it's all about, is creating those memories. And it applies to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation too, is even if you're doing a partnership and you have all these different assets across radio and podcasts and all these things, it's really about that connection, right? That's what's going to draw the stickiness so often that I think a lot of us are after. And it comes from a genuine place. So something also I wanted to hit on too is not only just looking forward on your career, but knowing what you know now, kind of the trends you think you'll see. So I'm going to phrase the question like this. We're going to go 5 years out, 2030.
Oh, man.
So 5 years from now, me and you are sitting and we're doing this podcast again. And I say, hey, looking back to 2025, 5 years ago, what do you think we underestimated the most? And this is a broad question. You could take it where you want.
Oh, my gosh.
2030, me
I
and
want
you
to
are
ask
sitting
you
down.
this question. I mean, 5 years from now, I'm very much a person that lives in the moment. But 5 years from now, I do see that podcast is here to stay.
Okay.
I do feel like broadcast is here to stay. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think people are going to, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so in trouble for this. I think people are going to burn out from influencers.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I just feel like it's so saturated. I feel like A selective group will rise to the top, and that's who people are really going to follow. I think it's just there's so much of it, right? And there's so many things people are selling. Like I said, I think people are going to maybe slow it down a bit. And
Okay.
I mean, I'm probably going to be wrong with this. It'll probably be all influencers for all we know, but
So I want to clarify that. So when you say influencers, are you talking specifically about social media influencers? Or are you talking about influencers? Because you mentioned it as a great point. Kind of radio hosts might have been one of the OG influencers, right? So like influencers go beyond just social media. Are you speaking more towards the social media influencers we know it?
I'm thinking about the social media influencers. I think
Okay.
there's gazillions and trillions of them. I think the really good ones are going to rise to the top, and they are probably all going to have podcasts. I think it's just going to be a lot more of a vertically integrated like system that pretty much copies what we do in radio right now. You're going to have, a morning show segment content via podcasts with these influencers. I think that's what we're going to start seeing more and more of.
And what role, because I wanted to talk about this earlier, but since we're on this topic, in your mind, what role does authenticity play, right? Like if you're looking at a host read ad, for example, with a really popular personality on one of iHeart's mediums, or it could be what we're talking about now, social, like to you, and maybe lessons learned, what role, if any, does authenticity play for these people who are influencing or supporting a brand or product?
I think it's important, but I also know that because we're so familiar with those talents, that them just talking about a brand already has that bond. It's already established. So right away, the consumer's like, oh, so and so is talking about this. Ryan Seacrest just talked about this. Well, he wouldn't put his name against anything if he didn't believe in it. So I think it's an automatic, like, this person believes in this product. It resonates well with the consumer. One would hope that they use the product, and clearly most of them require that. I think that it gets the immediate like authenticity once they do read a host read.
And shifting gears here a little bit. So we talked a little bit about looking back, looking forward, not only just from a career standpoint, but also trends. Hiring. I'm curious to know your perspective as someone's listening to this. And once again, maybe they're kind of interested in the space you're in, or, there's some similarities, just broad strokes here. But when you're hiring, what are the things that you look for or advice you would give to anyone who's listening to this podcast? And once again, they're probably listening to this. It's called Next Level. They're trying to get insights to help build their career, to hopefully push forward in their career, whatever that looks like. So for you, what do you look for when you're hiring?
Well, I don't personally do the hiring myself. Our teams do that here, but I would offer the advice of, definitely get on your LinkedIn, look at the companies that you're interested in working for, try to create connections there, go to events that have panels and reach out to the person that you saw on the panel and see if you can schedule some coffee. Internships are always available with different various companies. I would definitely, if you're in those college years, definitely jump on an internship. 100%, that's your best way in, or networking. Go to these different media events and network. Go to events, make relationships. That's how to do it. Just talk to people and ask them, like, how do I get in? And be tenacious.
If someone's listening to this and they're more introverted, I'm sure you've come across these people even in your space, what advice would you give on that end, where it's like, Jennifer, that might be easy for you, but it sucks the life out of me when I have to go talk to someone I don't know? Just advice to those kind of people who might be listening.
I mean, then get behind your desk and send a nice quick note via LinkedIn, even a handwritten note to somebody at their desk. Introverted people, I can introvert too, surprisingly enough. But I think that if you want something, you have to, get out of your own way, and you have to be tenacious and tactfully aggressive. That's just how it works. There's a lot of people who want roles, and like, how are you going to stand out? So do things like the handwritten notes, send multiple emails to the same person, asking them for 5 minutes of their time or any advice that they can give. You're smiling.
It's funny because the handwritten note goes a long way, right?
It does.
It's something so small,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something I'm trying to get better at, but I still have a long way to go. And it made me think of when you were saying that. So even like so when we bought our first house, me and my wife,
Mm-hmm.
the realtor said, write a note. And then we're like, why? He's like, he has multiple bids, right? If it's all kind of the same, and you write a handwritten note essentially saying what this house would mean and the vision you have, and sure enough, we got the house, right? So like, I think to your point, whether it's careers or something, just that little thoughtful intention goes a long way, don't you think?
100%. It does. And it's the effort made.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Something also I wanted to talk about too was, we're not gonna fact check this, but throughout your career, roughly how many partners have you had, like different clients?
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. I'm like having my life flash before my eyes right now.
Like I said, we're not gonna fact check, but if you had to just ballpark it.
100 plus.
Okay.
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, a lot.
So I say that to set this up because I think it's important. With over 100 different accounts, you've met lots of different leaders across different capacities through marketing, through operations, I imagine it's across all sectors.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of that data and those relationships you've talked about, if I had to say, Jennifer, what's the common thing that you've seen great leaders or great partners or just kind of all the people that you've interacted with? If I had to say like 1, 2, 3, how many you want? But what's some things they all have in common that you've witnessed?
That I've witnessed. Wow. I mean, I think a lot of them have had a sense of humor. I don't know if I've made them laugh, but I think we all have a job to do, but also not taking things so seriously. Like, know that we're all going to get to the end result. Everybody knows that if they trust one another, it's going to be a successful campaign or partnership. I think what's important is the trust that you build, that rapport. And it's really nice to have that from your client, and building that trust. So I guess, did that answer the question?
It does. And actually, it's kind of surprising because a lot of times when we talk about leadership, sense of humor and not taking yourself serious. That's interesting. And especially for, once again, context wise, you've seen over 100 different partnerships. So you've interacted with a lot of different leaders across sectors. And that's interesting, that not take yourself so serious. That's interesting. And why do you think that is? Why do you think they all have that in common and they're successful?
I think that if you are so serious all the time, your stress levels go up. I think that taking things in stride, having conversations, knowing that we're all going to work together to get to a goal without putting that pressure of, and then being able to laugh and joke around and, make it an enjoyable experience for everyone. I think it doesn't have to be all business, 24/7. And we're in entertainment, so it doesn't always have to be that way. I think that, the leaders that aren't super stressed or super serious have been there and are still at those companies and are, doing well, and they're still smiling and they're happy. So
yeah. And it speaks to something you mentioned earlier, the relationship piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like naturally, you're not gonna be able to build relationships if you're kind of always tense or always kind of like build this bubble around you, so to speak, just to humanize yourself a little bit and not take yourself so serious. I think that opens up windows of communication and relationships, and a lot of times serve you in ways you might not know in the immediate,
Mm-hmm.
So
I think if someone has fear or is intimidated by you, you're not going to get the best work out of them. I think if you disarm that person and you are relaxed, that person's going to give you the best version of themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And I think probably people listening to this could all relate. They've had those kind of supervisors or leaderships of their department I think you're 100%. When you create a culture of fear, it slows everything down. Not only are people not being their best, they're not productive, but it just slows everything down because everyone's operating in fear. So those are some great points you made. I want to switch a little bit to the other side of Jennifer. So we've talked about your career. We've talked about things that, you see from your perspective, but what about on the personal side? So for you, how do you unplug? Like, what's the most popular question we get is, how do people do work-life balance? But for you, kind of, how do you unplug so that you stay energized in your career?
Well, I really do love spending time with my daughter and like seeing the world through her eyes and how excited she gets about things that she has, whether it's hobbies or fashion or her friendships, and just being there for her and spending time with her. That's really how I unplug. Outside of being a parent and a mom, I really do love, concerts and live events and, that, and going with friends, not necessarily with my family, but just, going with some friends and listening to live music and just dancing and just having a great time. That's my way of unplugging, along with like worldwide travel and really great restaurants like the Pines Steakhouse, like dining there.
Nice plug. Nice plug.
Yes.
There.
Well, I really love the Pines. It's like really good. So
yeah, the team there does phenomenal.
Yes.
Another follow-up question, and thanks again for doing this podcast.
Sure.
I think this is super valuable. But these final questions are a little more quick in nature. We talked about podcasts. Do you have a favorite podcast on the personal side?
I do. I love Jay Shetty's On Purpose. Like, it's so good. Just like personally and professionally and everything that he talks about, it's just really inspiring and motivating. And he just keeps it super real and relatable to your everyday life. Like, you could take whatever he says and you're like, oh, I can apply this for today. And I really do enjoy his podcast.
Yeah, it's also one of my favorites.
Good.
To your point, I think for those who don't know his background, he was a former monk who practiced for several years. And now he's kind of take that and applied it to a modern world and really has some great in-depth conversations with leaders across business, entertainment, authors, and so much. So yeah, I agree. That's an awesome podcast.
And it's not because it's an iHeart podcast, but it does help that it is on our platform. But I do really enjoy it. Like, I would listen to him anywhere.
You beat me to it. See, I should have plugged that, right? You're talking about Pines, amazing podcast, which is an iHeart podcast. And it's an amazing podcast. Favorite quote, and maybe if you don't have a favorite quote, that's hard to do. But like, when I say that, is there a quote you really like that you come back to from time to time?
I mean, it definitely was treat others how you'd like to be treated. I mean, it is like from the Bible, but it's also a golden rule. Even on bad days, I'm like, okay, like, you have to treat everybody the way you want to be treated. It's a mirror. So if you go out in the world and you're not going to be so nice, well, guess what? You're not going to get nice back. And I really want to spend my days on this earth in a nice, energetic kind of space. At least I'm going to try. So I do treat everyone the same, whatever position they're in, it doesn't matter. I'm going to treat everyone exactly the same. And that's with respect and kindness. So I don't know if that's so much a quote, but just a way of life.
No, it's a perfect one, and it's been around for thousands of years. It must be doing something right. And I think, especially with kids, remind me, how old's your daughter?
She's 8.
Okay. So you're probably talking about the golden rule quite a bit. And it's an easy one to like understand, especially as you're younger, right? So
right. If someone punches you, you punch them right back. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole different ball game on the schoolyard,
Yeah, for sure. Something you nerd out on that maybe not a lot of people know about.
Oh my gosh. Harry Potter, musical theater, Disney, Marvel, oh my gosh, Lord of the Rings, anything like science fiction, mystery, like totally geek out on that.
So if you had to, because you said a lot there, there's
I know.
Disney, there's Marvel, there's Harry Potter. If hypothetically, Jennifer, you're only allowed to consume this medium, that franchise, so to speak, only one of them, you can't pick all of them, and you're on an island or whatever the fake scenario is, but you can only have one, what would it be?
Oh, probably Harry Potter. There's 8 movies. I can watch it over and over again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen Harry Potter.
What?
I've watched part of the first one. This was a long time ago. I think I was in high school or something. But yeah, I just couldn't. I didn't try again, so that's on me. I should probably try again.
You have 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a must see during the holidays. You have to watch all of the Harry Potter movies and binge them. Everybody needs to go get like a cloak and a wand, and then you go to Universal Studios. Like that's just what you got to do. But what do you geek out on if you're not, into the Harry Potters or besides podcasts? I know you're going to say podcasts.
Yeah, I do geek out on podcasts. Wait, you're interviewing me.
I know.
So probably 2 things come to mind. I'm not like a connoisseur. I couldn't say anything fancy, but I really like hot sauce. Oh. So like I couldn't tell you like the different things in them. Like I wish I could, but I just almost love all hot sauce. So like if there's any kind of unique hot sauce, I'm game. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is I might dabble a little bit still with WWE and professional wrestling, just a little bit. So
that's one expensive ticket. They were just here January 6th, and it was like $500-$600 just to get in the door. And that's like nosebleeds. So you and a lot of people are really into it.
I took my son when it was at SoFi a couple years ago, and it was awesome. 2 days, and he had fun. I had more fun probably. But yeah, those tickets in Vegas are just insane.
Insane. And just side note, I too bring my hot sauce to Disneyland because I don't like the hot sauce that they have. Like I bring my own hot sauce for my stuff there. So I also
homemade.
No. Oh no. I'm pretty generic, but I love my Tapatio. Like I put it on everything, and I can't leave home without it.
There you go. So Jennifer, once again, thank you for taking the time. This has been valuable, not only just for myself, but I know for our listeners. So I'm going to get you out on the final question we ask everybody. So this platform is all about helping people take their career to the next level. Hopefully they picked a thing or 2, but for you, if someone were to say, hey, if you provide 3 tips for anybody to take their career to the next level, what would those 3 tips be for you?
I would tell them to believe in themselves, like be confident that you can do anything your heart desires. Just do the work, the groundwork to get there, and never give up.
Do the work and never give up.
Exactly.
Tenacity, grit. And I think going back to earlier the conversation, that's just so fitting to your story. So congrats on all your success and all your future success.
Thank you.
And once again, thanks again for doing the podcast.
I really appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you for having me. And it's been such an honor to talk with you. I really, really appreciate it.
Likewise. Awesome. Have a good day, Jennifer.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Check out more episodes at thenextlevelcareers.com.